So we are now live and attendees are going to start populating in Zoom. So let's give it a minute. You can talk amongst yourselves if you want, but there are people populating slowly.
Good evening, friends. Here at the Ballard Institute and Museum of Puppetry and also on the World Wide Web. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Matt Sorensen. I am the interim co-director of the Ballard Institute and Museum of Puppetry, also an alumni of the program. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this forum that we're having, which is Maurice Sendak and the World of Puppetry. And this event is kind of based on our current exhibition in the galleries, which is Swinging into Action, Maurice Sendak and the World of Puppetry. And here joining us today are our friends from the Maurice Sendak Foundation. To my left, Tyler Wallace. And then all the way at the end of the table is our distinguished friend, Nick Krachina, who is the husband of one of the most prominent featured artists in this exhibition in London Rock. But before we introduce them, I'm going to do a few announcements. Things we've got coming up at the Ballard Institute. On November 10th at 7 p.m., we have our next forum. The making of Feel Your Best Self, developing script writing with Sandy Shapoulis, Emily Wicks, Yaniv Frank, and Sarah Nolan. That'll be on Facebook Live and Zoom. And on November 19th, 11 a.m., we have our next installation puppet forum. I apologize. Puppet performance series. And we've got the Gottabees coming. And the name of the show is Squirrels Stole My Underpants, which is a lot of fun. You can get tickets for that right now on Ticket Leap, which you can get the link on our website.
In the chat.
Oh,
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat right now because our beautiful Emily Wicks, who is my interim co-director counterpart, you can say that 5 times, is dutifully managing not the camera and all of our tech today, but she is supervising all of the World Wide Web activities as well. So she'll drop a couple information into the chat.
We're getting some comments about the sound, so I would recommend maybe taking it out of the holder and speaking up a little bit.
Sorry. So, I'd love to introduce tonight's forum. Maurice Sendak was not a puppeteer, but he understood the nature of puppetry's fascination with objects, images, movement, music, and text, and how a team of collaborators combine those elements for performance. Internationally acclaimed with such honors as the Hans Christian Andersen Illustrator Award, he wrote and illustrated such books as Where the Wild Things Are, for which he won the Caldecott Medal as creator of the most distinguished American picture book for children. In the Night Kitchen, Outside Over There, and the Nutshell Library. Sendak was also deeply engaged with the arts of puppetry and performance for most of his life. This exhibition shows the variety of ways that Sendak was intrigued by the possibilities of objects and motion. From his early years in Brooklyn, connecting with 1930s popular culture, his fascination with 19th century mechanical toys, and then the flowering of his work as it shifted into puppet, mask, and object performance, a rich variety of mediums. All the possibilities reflect Sendak's joy in imagining and realizing what his designs might be as aspects of the material world and performance. Planning for this exhibition was made possible thanks to the generosity and input and kind assistance of Lynn Caponera, Jonathan Weinberg of the Maurice Sendak Foundation, and their colleagues Tyler Collis, Leah McCloskey, and Doug Solity. We are also very excited to include here the work of the late puppeteer Amy Luckenbach, thanks to her husband, Nick Krachina, and daughter, Anna Krachina, and Sylvia Hetzel. We also deeply appreciate the work of Mark Greenlock and his colleagues at Warner Brothers Archives for lending us figures from Spike Jonze's Where the Wild Things Are film, and Richard Michelson and Paul Villa of the Art Michelson Galleries for allowing us to display the Goose of Cairo, owned by Justin Schiller. This forum is co-sponsored by the Maurice Sendak Foundation. So I'd like to introduce our guests. Lynn Caponera, President of the Board and Executive Director of the Maurice Sendak Foundation. Lynn met Maurice Sendak when he and Dr. Eugene Lynn moved to Ridgefield in 1971. Lynn spent her childhood at the Sendak-Lynn household, helping the garden, playing with the dogs, and modeling for Maurice for numerous books. At 19, she moved in as caretaker. Over the years, she took on a more rigorous role in Maurice's professional and personal life until his death in 2012. Jonathan Weinberg, PhD, is a painter, art historian, and curator. He is curator of the Maurice Sendak Foundation. He is the author of several books, including Peer Groups, Art and Sex Along the New York Waterfront, and Ambition and Love in American Art. He is the recipient of numerous grants, residencies, and fellowships, including a Guggenheim Fellowship. He is the curator of Wild Things Are Happening, the art of Maurice Sendak, which opened at the Columbus Museum of Art and runs through March 12, 2023. The exhibition of his Genesis window paintings, prints, is on view at the Eli Center of Contemporary Art, New Haven until January. Tyler Fallis is a Connecticut native and the Maurice Sendak Foundation assistant. He has been working at the Sendak Foundation for 4 years, studied English literature here at UConn. Nick Kricina is a painter and printmaker of Russian origin, raised in Poland and Germany, educated in the United States, and resident of Florence, Italy since 1964. Best known for his multi-plate color etchings, his artwork can be found in private collections and galleries around the world, as well as the Uffizi Gallery's permanent collection of prints and drawings in France. In Florence. It says it right there. Since graduating from the Rhode Island School of Design in 1962, Gina has held over 158 solo exhibitions across 5 continents. In 1963, he met and married Amy Leffenbach while studying for his Master of Fine Arts degree at University of Southern Illinois. In 1964, having completed his degree, he and Amy moved to Florence, Italy. Since the 1970s, Kricina has taught, lectured, and given demonstrations on multi-plate color etching at universities and art schools in the United States, England, Italy, Mexico, Colombia, and former Czechoslovakia. Welcome. We have quite a distinguished panel here. This is very exciting. This exhibition, curated by Ballard director Dr. John Bell, who is on sabbatical. Looks at the various ways Sendak designed, collected, and collaborated with puppets and puppet productions. The exhibited works reflect the idea. We feature Sendak's sketches, his collection of 19th century mechanical toys and pop-up books, some of Sendak's production designs, and puppets inspired by his body of work. Jonathan, I'd like to leave with you. You curated and overseen many exhibitions of Sendak's work over the years, most recently your exhibition in Columbus. What is it about Sendak, your experience, that people are fascinated with, and why is his body of work still so popular today?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing you have to say, although we're always trying to get people beyond this, is when Wild Things Are Happening. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about a collector is that the amount of stories, those are things that he had when he was a child. And so many people have this deep connection, not just to Wild Things, but there's where the kitchen or a library. So they have this deep, I mean, you know, it's interesting thing in art history, often you work on trying to think people who's worth looking at, but when it comes to Sendak, you don't have to do that. They're already alive. They love to look at it. They love to, if they're older, they're remembering when they were a child, or folks that they gave to their children. Kids are still looking at it, so it's ongoing thing. So that's amazing. And then the other thing which is so exciting is here you have this artist who is making work that is so present to people now, and yet is so deeply immersed in the history of art in the 19th century. As this shows you this amazing connection to the history, not just of puppets, but of mechanical toys, pop-up books, of all kinds of Megendorfer. It's sort of incredible how he was constantly looking at the past, and how for him, you know, this is the main point, is that for him it really wasn't the past. It was sort of idea that in some ways he lived almost in the past, or but well, you know, that sounds creepy, I guess, but it's also totally present too. It's like it's all alive, you know, and you feel that the minute you come into this space, and you and John and Emily, what you've done here, it's just incredible. Feel Maurice's spirit, and yet you also feel all these different artists sort of feeding off words, really, in the same way that he fed off other artists. So very exciting.
Follow-up questions to that. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but how is Swing into Action in comparison to other exhibitions that work that you curated?
So I have to say one thing. I was gonna let that go, but I actually only curated this big retrospective. I've never curated, right? No, I'm new to curating Sendak, and I'm pretty new to curating in general. I've done some big shows, but I'm a painter, art historian, and I write a lot, but I'm pretty new to curating. But I grew up knowing since like Lynn, I've known since I was 10 years old. So, and I think for both of Lynn and us, she'll talk more about this. We, he was family, and we fed on what we saw. We constantly were looking, and Lynn worked very closely with on many different projects. But in a certain way, we didn't study it. So that's the thing that's different, right? It's kind of, and then we're always, we have learned so much from you guys about, even thinking about this work, his body of work in this way, or when I didn't really know about Amy's work until the last few years, because at that point when Amy was doing things, I was somewhere else. I wasn't sort of, so it's actually quite remarkable what we are learning all the time. So I've seen a lot of Sendak shows. I would say that there hasn't been a show like this one, which is so focused in and really does both the service of showing wild things, but also shows how it isn't just about wild things, it's about all the other things. So, maybe other people want to hear anything about it.
Yeah, just that mostly like, when you grow up with somebody and sort of like, you just almost take it for granted what they do for a living. Reese makes books, it's like my son, would say, like he'd say to other kids, well, which books do your grandparents make? It's sort of this idea that everybody makes picture books. So it's it's just sort of the way of growing up with somebody, and the only thing we can really do is learn from Maurice and learn from people who come in and study Maurice and talk about Maurice, because we were the day-to-day Maurice, and the history of children's literature. But we're learning, we're getting there. So that's sort of the Maurice Sendak Foundation is. This is sort of a prime example of our core mission, which is to promote the legacy of Maurice Sendak. And so many people don't know about the other sides of Maurice's careers. They get little snippets of things, but they don't understand the extent of what kind of artist he was. There's all kinds for his whole life studying. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting about that, I'm just thinking about that now, is that for both of us, Wild Things, I think Frank wasn't the major way into Maurice's work. When I met him, he was working, he just done a Higgly Wiggly Pop when I was 10 years old, and so there wasn't really through Wild Things, and then we kept seeing all these different books that he did along the way, right? And so we would watch him working on In the Night Kitchen or working on Puppetry. But one thing both of Lynn and I took for granted until we only relatively recently discovered was that he always said that if you were going to be a good illustrator, you had to have many styles. And that, of course, when you did a new project, you had to change styles and fit the style to whoever was the writer. And we assumed that that's what all these people did. And that's not what most illustrators do. Most illustrators have one style. And so I think even here, come around and look at all the different things that are going on, you think, wow, that's incredible. But that was typical for his. He was constantly changing. And we just took that for granted. I thought that's what you're supposed to do. And it is a good thing to do. It was unusual, it was exceptional. Yeah.
Thank you. And I apologize for saying that.
No.
You are the curator of the foundation.
Of the foundation, where can I have to just. So what I meant is I haven't curated a lot of museum exhibits,
Right.
but I curated, take care of the
fantasy sketches a little bit. So Sendak loved to allow music to inspire him as he drew, connected the nature of music to the images that he was drawing. Thinking about the relationship between the images and action in his 1964 essay, A Shape of Music, he wrote, vivify, quicken, and vitalize. Of these three synonyms, quicken, I think, best suggests the genuine spirit of image. The breathing of life, the swing into action that I consider as an essential quality shirts for children's books, which is also where this exhibition. Lynn, can you talk to us about Maurice's fantasy sketches?
Well, the fantasy sketches were another example of Maurice's like constant, to always teach and learn more about his craft. First of all, he would have, if he had a choice, he would have been a musician. That was always his thing, is he said, if I could have been a musician or actor or composer. So he would put on a piece of music and he would put a piece of paper down and he would have to draw what he heard in the music to a piece of music. And it's really a fascinating example of how an artist continues to try to learn, teach themselves different techniques. And what I think is really interesting about these fantasy sketches too is that they were like at different periods of his life that he was interested in different artists. So when you look at the sketches, you can see influences of the artists that he was interested in. Like you might see Chagall in some of these drawings, and you also see the very, very first idea of where the wild things are from 1953 in one of these fantasy sketches. So they're like, for us, they're really important because they sort of are like a biography of Maurice's interest in artists and music in his life. And they also are his connection to Amy, because it was through these fantasy sketches that the projects were put together. Maurice would go back and he reworked some of these fantasy sketches for Amy then to make into the puppet show. So it's just sort of like a really kind of cool full circle thing right now that we're looking at fantasy sketches, talking about Amy's work, and having Nick and Sylvia here to talk about all of this and be here. So it's very exciting.
Wonderful. So on the screen, Paul is giving us a little view of the fantasy sketches as well. This final fantasy sketch that she has on screen right now is the story about the voracious young boy, which is a favorite of our visitors here, and it happens to coincide with some puppets that Bob created for the New England Festival.
The New Haven.
The New Haven Festival of Arts and Ideas in 2001. We will get back to that. Thank you. The next thing I would like to talk about in terms of the flow of this exhibition, we also have a great deal of Sendak's items that he collected that he was very interested in. So we have a lot of 19th century mechanical toys and some other really great artifacts that Sendak was enthusiastic about. Particularly in 1948, Sendak and his brother Jack collaborated on a simple automata design based on children's stories. And Jack was one who created the mechanics, and Sendak was doing the artistic storytelling. In addition to that, we have things he collected, for instance, mechanical wind-up scenes by artists Lothar and Megan Werber, or some tab drawings. And it kind of goes to show how much Sendak really enjoyed taking two-dimensional artwork and making it come alive and jump off the page. We also have some really great collectors items from the Mickey Mouse collection. Maurice Sendak was a fanatic for 1930s Mickey Mouse. So a lot of people would bring Mickey Mouse figures by the Sendak Foundation as gifts when they visited them. And we have quite a lot of pop-up books here as well, which is really, we have some that are quite old, and then we also have one that Sendak made himself, which is called Mommy. And it's about this boy who is lost in a haunted house, and he keeps encountering these horror creatures, and he just wants to find his mother, and he keeps going and going, and finally finds his mother, and it's The Bride of Frankenstein, which to me is very Sendakian sentiment. Having said all of that, Jonathan, as curator of the collection, and this most recent exhibition on Sendak's work, can you speak on the nature of not only Sendak's own work, but also the types of objects that he was fascinated with?
Right, well, the thing is, as you can say, just listing those things, is that he didn't believe in a traditional kind of hierarchy, because he also had a wonderful collection of artists like George Stubb, Samuel Palmer, William Blake. He didn't think that Mickey Mouse Disney was less good than Samuel Palmer or William Blake. He thought that they were all really great artists, and as he would say, he would steal from them. Rather, there's an argument about who originally said that. He said he quoted Blake quote that sort of says that that's what a good artist does, steal another thing. I think Picasso said that in bar, right? You're supposed to. This is something that really Maurice believed in, the idea of emulating other artists, that you even copy them, but that you have a certain faith that your own style, the thing that makes you is still going to come through. In some ways, in emulating an artist, the way you fail to emulate, that's how you find out who you are. So he loved to have things around him that inspired him. There's an interview with him that he did in the 90s with Phil Jersey, and Phil asked him, was in the house, right, incredible, these wonderful objects. He said, well, what would happen? The funny interview question: what would happen if there was a fire and you lost and all this stuff, right? It's a strange question to ask. Anyway, and Maurice says, instead of what you're supposed to say is, well, as long as I have my health, I will be fine. Instead of saying that, he said, I would put my head in the gas in the oven, and that would be it. I would kill myself. And then later there's something about an embarrassment, Richie's Maurice. He said, no, I'm not embarrassed. It's not. I love these things. The things I need to make it work. So it's just when you look around the house, you realize that in a way Maurice didn't have to travel. In a way, he did travel, but he could just look outside the window of his house or look at his surrounding work. His books too, all the books on art. It's just the way that it's in his imagination. And one of the things that we like to try to emphasize is that all of this, it wasn't like just that Maurice was connected to his childhood or just imagines stuff out of his head. He used these things like the sketches to supercharge these things, right? He's not waiting for inspiration to hit. He has a system, a way of working, so that he's always getting inspired, always finding what the next project is. And often that means being deeply involved with one particular artist and researches and studies, and that artist, like who's McLean and the night that you went to key for that, right? Or Mozart, as Amy Wood's work is all about Mozart. He's obsessed with Mozart. He wants to know everything about Mozart. He wants to fantasize things. He wants to live with Mozart. So seeing the Mozart dolls here, it's like Mozart's, Yes.
Follow-up questions. One's for Tyler. Tyler, you were instrumental in helping me identify and process many of the objects in the exhibition. Especially Amy Luckbox puppets, which have been recently donated to the Sendak Foundation by Nick and his family. Can you describe from your perspective what it feels like to handle and care for these puppets?
Sure. It feels really nice. It was great to see them for the first time, especially because they came in these like massive trunks, so opening them was like, you know, they literally looked like treasure chests, so it's like, you know, opening it and seeing that was really wonderful. But to, returning to the quote you talked about before, with, you know, this, which I'm gonna butcher right now, but the spirit of animation is, you know, vitality and movement and stuff, seems so appropriate that she did these fantasy sketches and literally, you know, now she's doing them to, you know, literally movement. So it's like the manifestation of, I guess, like the embodiment of like that quote, but kind of what he was getting at, like the spirit of animation. And yeah, it's just fun.
Yeah.
I will add to that, that it's brilliant having the fantasy sketches of art and illustrations, which were the source materials for Amy's on show for the Festival of Arts and Ideas. And they're, you know, we start the exhibition tours with the sketches, and then we end up going in there, and just the joy on not only people that are here, but also you get this real sense of movement from Sendak's work, which is inspirational, and it's just, it exists. So then these puppets in juxtaposition, such a very natural, very exciting progression. Does anyone have anything else to say about
Oh, yeah. You know, actually, getting on to that thing is that, you know, all of Maurice's work is created really from, I mean, his books are created from the turning of a page and the book, and his theaters, etc. Obviously from, and so I think it's really kind of safe to say that Maurice always had the idea that everything, that there's nothing static in any of his work. You know what I mean?
You know, it's interesting because he later became really good friends with Twyla's daughter. And she said something like that, like that he was sort of like in him this kind of dancing qualities. The other thing is this came up today, which I think is so beautifully done in your exhibit, which if you think about it, it sort of shows the people who influenced Maurice, and then as you go through it, then you get Maurice's work, and then it's the people he influenced who influence. So it's not this wonderful generation thing that's happening. Yes, no, one of your
So it's like when I look at the puppets that Amy did, it makes perfect sense that like how they would get along and like collaborate so well. Because they're so big, the sketches and like Maurice's style, while also incorporating their own style. But yeah, they seem perfect representations of this work. Here's my husband's schedule. Yeah.
Nick, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I have a lot to that. First of all, I got to know that years ago. I really learned that we want workshop. Well, she brought the board to the other she repeated it every night. I was a kid. Other kids came to see the show. So since she was, I'm here for a while. Now, it was fascinating. How to pages turn, how much there was with visual activity. For example, the person drawing or the rough things out. Drawing is only in the center. A lot of white space. Simply one space. It's two pages. So that in itself, as I was saying, already established the rhythm, just like 2 pages. It's very visually inside. This rhythm, which you didn't know at that time. So she decided to animate it. We put out an issue, we put animal. Is the fire. The fire. It's so into something, that's what she did. She took where well is our, she animated. And so she went for 2 years. She went so to speak, someone that was fantastic or well-known artist. She just said that she found this unique book that she treasured. So that went back to 1976 when she kind of presented. She met Louise in 1988. Was a era of books. Louise was honored Goddess of the Year. She knew that the guest she went there. She was great to do. Yes, another was very clear. As how do you put this person when you come up saying, you don't know me, but I know you. It's one way. So, the word insipid, things, reaction. That's what I'm. You gotta become. Years later, 1999, Maurice and Tony Frischman stuck away from the company and see all of those. Over. Finish the drawing. Was a story. Made up the story as we go. Finish exactly the mission. Seeing something exist. She expressed something like so we then mentioned Syria. Syria. She would move Syria. He opened down the line. Mozart. Love. Especially casual. Also, it's so. Especially that Sunday. Second part, no line, also and also. In that version. It goes the same way as you do a page, and starting with this. And sitting, and then we have said the image painted, so she could operate. November of 88 and time. 2 months in started. So she's working with all the field and voice from one side. She did because the first one in the Indian province, she learned about the education storyboard.
Right.
Okay.
Is that great?
Yeah. So. So this purpose was really based on the drawings. The puppeteers were animated physically. They were the movements were dictated and animated by music also. She presented that in the June of 2001. She did the whole thing here and there. First show was about so this is then also animated here animated.
Great. Thank you for that. So now I want to talk about Sendak the designer. Later in his life, Maurice Sendak became a prolific designer for theater and ballet and opera. It had a long list of productions that he's, but we are starting with Coming Little Vixen in 1981. We have Love the Three Oranges, 1982. Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker in 1983. Mozart's Goose of Cairo in 1984. And the list builds and builds. Every year, he's doing a new design for a new production. And this is in the 70s and 80s when it's on this work, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And we have this very established, really amazing illustrator and author taking on a whole new career path that arguably ties in very strongly with the work. But I wanted to know, Lynn, from your perspective, since you were living with him during this time, were there nuances or challenges for Maurice going from working a lot on his own in the studio to then collaborating with other artists and craftspeople, which is kind of the Puppetry manifesto?
Yeah, I mean, when Maurice theater, kind of opened up a whole new world for me, because you know, being a picture book artist is kind of solitary lifestyle. But what's also amazing is that this book of the theater that he's doing, he's also still doing books. So, you know, he was creating outside over there, and it's really interesting, to me, it's really interesting to look at, see when he's working on outside over there, he'll be working in the same palette on, literally, he had the same paint on his plate. So the same palette would be in that opera or the theater pieces. That was in the book, that he was working on at the same time. Because he was often listening to the music of that opera while he was working. He was listening to a wild Mozart. Outside of it. And there's Mozart in the background and outside of there, and Dear Millie, and there's the Mozart in the background. So, you know, yeah, I mean, it opened up a whole new world for him to also be able to have collaborations that were in person with people. But he would also have to travel to theaters and opera houses and costume shops. And being able to work with people like Amy was really sort of a whole new life for him, you know, because it brought people into his life, their lives. It was a whole new thing for him. He really enjoyed the whole process of collaboration. And you know, Jonathan and I went to see Michael Hagen's studio, where most of his sets, almost every one of his sets, were painted in upstate New York. And you know, we thought, oh gosh, you know, how did they get Maurice's line and how did they do this? But Maurice just like so trusted he would work with a collaboration with somebody that he wanted them to like not worry about him, but make it their own. But in the end, it looks exactly like Sendak, you know. It's really quite amazing. I mean, you talked about this before, but you could.
Well, I mean, one of the things I think, I mean, just thinking about this collaboration, it's right that when Maurice was younger, he was working in when he lived in New York, when I first knew him in 9th Street, he had this tiny little studio that was magical, surrounded with back of this sort of brownstone, and it was a little bed where you could sit and talk to him. He always liked people to talk to him. He was like painting and stuff like that. But one thing, if you keep in mind, when he was younger, I went to traditional art schools, and if you were in a crit, still to this day, people would say, if they didn't like painting, they'd say, oh, it's too much like an illustration, right? Because illustrators are working across a medium, right? They're combining writing with painting. They're often, right from the beginning, where he's collaborating in the whole today with Krauss or working with Randall Jarrow, or he's working with, so he was used to collaborating in certain sense. But, and always this thing in those lines, like when he would go on press, he was always fascinated, always interested in how something is important to him, who's working on it, how. Or later when he's doing the huge balloon, he immediately charms all the people who are working. He wasn't snobby about it. He really, truly wanted to know. When it came to opera, he wanted to know how the opera worked, how does set design work, how does it. So this is extremely curious, right? Like always interested and absolutely respectful of all the different people who are working, because he's getting so much out of it. Like he is recharging his batteries all the time, I think. So he loved the idea of working across the medium. While so much in modernism, that's the boring art history idea, but so much in modernism, particularly in the 50s and the 60s, was about how each medium is supposed to be separate. It's supposed to be, painting is supposed to be painting, sculpture is supposed to be reinvented. Maurice is always working against that. Always opera, after all, it's an ultimate glossy music, their story, everything. So, and of course, when he's working with Amy, and these are the same things I'm sure you get in puppetry, right? All this snobism about, you know, well, people who really know. Charles Ludlam was great with the theory of the absurd, but he said that with the puppet, you're truly acting. It's like, it's the pure acting. It's the essence of acting. You're using your hands, and it's not this visceral connection, right? So I think with Maurice, there was that sense that don't follow these rules. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And he was fortunate to be in a medium, children's books, where people sort of didn't notice in a funny way that he was making this incredibly great art. He could do it. And in a funny way, they only realized it after the fact. And it's a funny way that sort of opera, opera set design, as much as that's a great thing to do, it's not something that the art world particularly focuses on. Or all these different ways that you get to do narrative art or do big scale art, all these sort of just unexpected, surprising, not where you would expect him to be. That makes sense. And that's what's great about the show.
Thank you very much. So we talked a lot about his collaborators, specifically who for decades was working on and with Maurice's work, and also across the Atlantic Ocean for a good portion of that. So Nick, my question is for you. How did Amy feel about her relationship with Maurice? And a follow-up for that would be, how would she feel about this exhibition?
And if you can just really try to hold the microphone close and project.
So they were like two kids. And just love emphasizing, playing around with ideas. I said we really do love it to see. They played together, even though the woman was scared. And Amy was one of the most silly things that you just as an outsider. The very part of the creative act stimulated each other. When she passed away in 2009, both to me, very teaching letter of naming from the was creative and gave her all the freedom to do it. She felt creative strength for him. It was time to herself. Keep it flying in reality. Spirit. Listening from the sense.
Absolutely, that's great. So I think we have some time that we're going to be taking some questions from our viewers at home. So I'm going to read off what was put here. So, first question. Curious what you can share about the issue of Maurice Sendak being a writer, illustrator, storyteller, as opposed to the limiting description of him as a children's book author.
Yes, he liked an artist, right? And so, yes, and you'll notice that on most, all of his books, after a certain day, we actually control. It says pictures by Maurice Sendak, but it didn't like the word illustrator. In some ways, it's a kind of tricky thing because he thought illustration was great, but also was very aware that it's like a story that there was an article, I don't know, I was in Life magazine in which it said Norman Rockwell, year illustrator, question mark, right? Artist or mere illustrator, right? And Maurice, what does that mean? Why, the ceiling by Michelangelo is illustrating the Bible, right? Why is there this ridiculous notion that if an artist is working using words and images, that somehow that is lesser or somehow that diminishes work? That's a prejudice of modernism, right? And very much opposed that. And yet at the same time, he talks about sometimes being relegated to kiddie book land. That was a crazy like, right? So, of course, being asked to do the magic flute, or later in his career, he illustrated, Mango's Year, doing a so-called did several grown-up. And he also, I'm sorry, going on, but he questioned the very notion that his books were for children. Like to say, he did his books for himself, right? And they just happened to be full, happened to think that they belong to children, but they're really, and that's in fact been true, I think.
That would be very good. My next question is for everybody. What is your favorite Maurice Sendak book?
I'm saying of pop. It's or the Musty Word of Life. It's still Jenny that passed away, and Jonathan and I both feel that it was Maurice's favorite book. He said it was his favorite, but also because Maurice was in the world's bookmaking, whatever book was out that year was his favorite book. But it was the only book that Maurice's drawings were hung in the studio. He didn't hang up any of his other own artwork in the house. It was just able to pick it up.
Yeah, the things I would say the same thing, and it's a book that I give people, not just when they have a loss of a pet. I'm a pet person, so cats don't have dogs, but I totally get that. But it's a book that is so beautiful and melancholy about the step, but Maurice said too, and I agree with him, it's his funniest book. So it's a hilarious book, it's a touching book. One of his close friendships was with Spike Jones. They worked for Somewhere the Wild Things Are. And I'm thinking movie Her, is dedicated to Maurice. And for people who know him, and I asked Spike about it, the ending of Her is a quote, really quotes from him. So, it just shows again another way in which Maurice is working. And Maurice, coming back just to Amy, and what Tyler said, that Amy is able to make it look like a Maurice drawing, right? But it looks like she did it. That's what Maurice is always doing. Spike makes a movie Where the Wild Things Are, which is obviously based on Maurice's work, but it's totally a Spike Jones movie. That's sort of the thing. That's the Sendakian thing, right? Oh,
I have to say Higglesy too. I just think it's the best. I guess it's so perfect. And it's the longest, so you get to enjoy it for a longer amount of time.
coming back and print,
Yeah,
right?
it is, yeah.
But we're not selling it because you can't, right now, you can't buy it on the.
You can order it. but
You can order it, you can order it, right?
Publications of Maurice, right? So,
Yeah.
yes.
You know,
Beautiful scene. Such as.
It's like Family Feud.
Yes.
Good,
Exactly.
good choice.
I think nurses, but we're in the process of the documents.
Mm.
So they'll all be filed in one book with message. So that's our, that's our next project.
Very exciting. So another question for Lynn and Jonathan specifically. Do you have a favorite memory of Maurice?
Actually working in the garden, because he loved to work in the garden, loved to do everything. He was the ultimate teacher. Like, if we were working in the garden, you had to, not in sort of a boss employee sort of way, but he would sort of make you understand that every job is an important job that should be done correctly. You know, and I'm like 13 then, weed and like skip a couple of rows, and he's like, well, what are you doing? You know, it's like, no, you have to go back, be always in the garden to do everything properly. So I think working outside of the very easy, you just love to be outside. And then he would talk to you about nature, and you go back in the house and he would show you, you know, drawings of putter, and different things in nature, or he'd show you, you know, he would just run the gamut, because he loved to teach. He really just loved to be able to teach and talk to people about it.
So it's funny, because I think we both, you know, it is like family. So, you know, I think like when you think of your family or parents, or your child, you know, and I always think back to that tiny little studio that he had, where he had this drawing table, and I would be waiting for his partner, who was my mother's best friend, and we would go to the museum, he would take us to the museum at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He was always late, so I would sit where his studio, and that was the time he was working on In the Night Kitchen. So In the Night Kitchen there was a lot of coloring it in, because of the way the color separation was done, so a lot of it was very dull, and he would be painting it with these poster paints that you use in kindergarten. And a lot of his greatest work done with rich art poster paints that you could build up slowly, methodically. And I would sit, you know, like this like 12-year-old, like sitting on this bed. And we had a little place where people would sit, and Maurice would whistle also. Literally, and we always talk about this, he could literally whistle an entire opera from beginning to end, perfect pitch. So he literally whistled when he worked. And I remember when I was very little, he gave me my first watercolor stuff, that he said that I should try to do those fantasy sketches. In other words, he would give that as an assignment. I wonder how many other artists or fellows who ever tried them out. It was a kind of task that he would give you. Anyway, you would sit and he would tell funny stories or games or whatever, and you would try to, you know, keep him entertained, actually. And he was so interested in you when you were a little kid. He didn't treat kids like they were like beneath him or something. He never talked. I have no memory of him getting down on his knees and talking. I was short. Talking to me the way that some grown-ups think that that's a good way to talk to children. I always thought when I was little, why are you doing that? You're tall. Why would you get down on your knees and talk to me like that? I always found that really annoying. But he always talked to you like you were a grown-up, I guess, or just people wanting to know what you thought and what you cared about.
One other question. This is a ritual for me, because I leave tours to this place, and I always ask people at the end, what was your favorite object in the exhibition? And Emily has this lovely ring of fields, so we're actually mobile. So what I would love to do is have you all your favorite object, stand by it, and we will share.
Really awesome.
That'll be easier. Do we start with Jonathan?
Yes.
I think this is Tyler's too, but
You want to do a joint presentation?
it's generous.
You can do it together if you like.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, Jonathan Weinberg.
Oh, you have to talk about it?
Well.
Why is it your favorite?
It's an easy question. Why is this your favorite piece?
Well, so one of the things that's in a lot of Maurice's work. So, you know, when he's doing those fantasy sketches, he has certain shticks, you know, and when he loves reenacting various scenes of people eating other people, or like, you know, a mother will eat a baby will eat a mother, fish will eat a boy, you know, there's a constant kind of, there's a lot of eating going on, right? And supposedly, even in Where the Wild Things Are movie, that was one of his big contributions. It's one of the Max gets, right? Like Max gets eaten by.
Well, he hides inside.
He hides inside, right? Because the people don't really, and of course, National Library. So this big mouth figure seems to me really, emblematic. And this is perfect. I mean, it's got Maurice's feeling, but Maurice wouldn't have broken the legs up that way or done it that way. It just feels like Maurice, and I think it also probably feels like Amy, right? Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Nick, it's your turn.
What's our favorite piece?
I'm gonna go Haydn and Mozart. There's a lot of music that Mozart wrote referred to Haydn. And so this is proper. And a series of fantasy sketches that Maurice did. He would send it to Amy in the realm where maybe Mozart, and then she'll put him to sleep at the end. And there'll be Papa Haydn and Mozart and put him to sleep. Even and the dawn. Playing, dancing with Maurice. Mozart. Fall asleep and dawn thinking that. And so each sequence, various people that came in contact with each piece of paper that Maurice was drawing in that last drawing. This is what I love.
Lovely. Thank you. Okay, Lynn, your turn.
Well, I'm in here with Nick,
Well,
actually.
that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Great minds think alike.
I love this with Mozart and his dog Hempel, but Reese had another version of this that Amy had made, and he kept it in his bedroom, and it actually sat right next to his bed, a smaller little version of Mozart and the dog. So he had this in his room till he died, actually. I just love this one because it's all about this letter that Mozart and his sisters had exchanged his letters about the dog and about wanting to see the dog and missing the dog. And Maurice actually owned some of these Mozart letters, so to see it like in real life is sort of an amazing thing, the whole progression of the letters are like right here. So yeah, this is wonderful.
Tyler,
It could be anything.
it can be anything in the
whole
whole exhibition. Wheels.
So gosh darn beautiful.
Exhibit tour.
This is the free tour, everybody.
Sorry, I think we're off-roading.
Sorry.
Okay.
You're doing great. Thank you for the impromptu driving, Emily Wicks.
Hopefully people aren't getting seasick. Okay.
Yeah, I just think it's really pretty. That was pretty much my whole.
Do you want to talk a little bit about it, just
Oh, yeah.
because we
sure.
don't have
So-
the goose here anymore?
Yeah, it's true. So there was 13-foot tall goose that I don't know how you got in here, but yeah, and it's based off of this watercolor from his Pyro opera. Oh, it's right there. And he has like a little mock up here, and that also moves. And the goose itself also, its neck went up and down, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's truly impressive machinations, but I mostly like I just think it's got like so much beautiful color and depth.
Actually, the goose, I don't know if Tyler knows, but in the actual production of the Goose of Cairo, the goose would be wheeled out onto the stage, and the tenor.
Do you want to hand the
would
microphone?
Would drop.
yes.
Oh, and she'd be wheeled out onto the stage, and the tenor would be inside the goose, and he would drop out of the goose's bottom singing. So very Mozartian performance. So yeah, and Maurice is, it's very Maurice-y, as we like to say all the time. That's a Maurice type thing. So
That's excellent. I say Sendakian
Yeah, I was gonna
on
say
my
Sendak.
tour a lot, so it's kind of a compass.
Can I ask a follow-up question for the staff? Is there an object in the collection that you wish we could have exhibited, but maybe for some reason we couldn't? Is there anything in the collection that's like, oh, I wish this was on display?
Oh, yeah.
Specifically for like.
I can tell you one thing, it'd be great if you could have had it, like, I'd love the Macy's balloon. Somebody's listening, I would like them to remake the Macy's balloon. We have a photograph of it, but. You know, I would like to see that go down, like for Thanksgiving, I would like to.
Yeah.
Can we get on that?
Wait, so I have just a question for Nick. I was looking at Max here. And I feel like Max looks a little bit like Amy. Is that crazy? That's a crazy idea? 'Cause, yeah, so you provided, let's look at a photograph of her.
Every artist,
Or maybe it looks like your daughter, right?
every artist, whenever they make image of another person as part of them, it's always there. So definitely, I haven't committed that. Thinking about it, thought I should say that, yes. You hear me now? No, so as I was saying that every artist repeats themselves within whoever the subject matter is, as part of them. If you look at, for example, Leonardo da Vinci's self-portrait, and there's a theory about the Mona Lisa and the self-portrait of the same artist that both of those paintings.
Thank you very much. Can I share my favorite piece?
Oh, yes.
So I just wanted my turn, and this is part of my tour also. I always say these pieces by Amy are my very favorite set that we have in the exhibition. It's a really excellent example of a traditional hand puppet stage, and she captured Maurice's illustrations so beautifully and so perfectly. But then she also has these three-dimensional figures that are Amy, but it's still these characters, the essence of these characters, which we have, mentioned already that this is one of the qualities of this collaboration. So I really enjoy the juxtaposition of the objects, as well as just how beautifully made and kept these pieces are. And Nick found another component of this hand puppet set and brought it with him. So we're going to add it to the show, which is really exciting. So thank you for that.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Yes, someone just asked, could you please repeat the name of whose work that is?
This is all the work of Amy Luckenbach, who was an American who got married to Nick and moved to Italy and did a ton of puppetry work. And she not only made this Where the Wild Things Are set, but then she started a relationship with Maurice Sendak and collaborated on multiple shows. And we have this Max puppet that we were describing before. This is from the Where the Wild Things Are opera. And it is a scaled down version of Max so that the puppet could be childlike and agile and work well with the life-size, human-sized wild things. And also we were talking about the New Haven Festival of Arts and Ideas puppets, which are fantasy sketches and the life of Mozart. This is all Amy's work. We're so happy to have here. Another fun fact, this is the first time that Amy's work has been exhibited in America. And I just wanted to ask Nick, firstly, how do you feel about that? And secondly, how would Amy have felt about this exhibition?
Yes, you asked me that before and I forgot to
That's
mention.
okay.
Your question was how would Amy, she would love it to see her work in this exhibit dedicated to Maurice. We love Maurice. Maurice loved her. This would be a great seal of approval outside of some of them. Because they already knew each other, the speculation of the numbers. This exhibit goes beyond the two of them, goes, it's for the public that will come in into the museum and see this exhibit. So she'll be delighted.
Thank you. We have time for another question.
Well, I think maybe it would be good to let people know, when does this exhibition close?
That's a really good question, Emily Wicks. So this exhibition will be open until December 16th. The museum hours of operation are Wednesday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. No reservations required, just drop on by. We do group tours and workshops here as well. So if you're interested in that, just check on our website, bimp.uconn.edu.
And maybe for any Midwest viewers, Jonathan, the Columbus Museum of Art exhibition.
Oh, yes, so that is running to, I believe, March 5th. So it is up now and all the way through Christmas. I don't know the hours of the Museum of Art, but they have a great website.
But that's Columbus, Ohio. So if
Columbus,
anyone,
Ohio, yes, capital of Ohio, yes. Their museum, and they would love to be there. Great, great.
Well, thank you very much for joining us for this forum. I had a great time. I know you did too. Thank you very much to Lynn Caponera, Jonathan Weinberg, Tyler Fallis, and Nick Cucina. Sorry.
we allowed to ask one
One
follow-up
more
question.
question, sure.
What's different in the Columbus Museum of Art exhibit compared to this exhibition?
What's
That's a
different in the
that's a
Columbus
good one,
Museum of
actually.
Art?
I'm curious to know.
Well, the Columbus Museum of Art is a retrospective of Maurice Sendak's entire career, and it's something like over 200 works of art and books, and so it's very comprehensive. I think actually it's the largest exhibition of Maurice's work that's ever been staged. So it's bigger, but that doesn't make it better. It's just it's not as focused. This is a much more highly focused exhibit. So very rich. And I think the best thing would be if you saw both. I mean, what a fantastic combo.
Hmm.
Let me say also, I know we are in awe of the Ballard, right? I mean,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
you guys just did such an amazing thing here. And when we first came and saw the Ballard, we fell in love with it. And I think it's fantastic to do here. It's so special. It's not like any other place that I know, and you just did such an amazing job.
John Bell is a genius.
John Bell's
Yes,
genius,
it
Matt's
was.
genius. Emily, we never heard what's your favorite, Emily's favorite work.
That's hard. I mean, okay, so like Matt and I have gotten to know the
Oh, wow.
right behind you, since you've already all mentioned a lot of my favorites. I'll give a shout out to the Henson Creature Shop figures from the 2009 Spike Jones, Where the Wild Things Are. We've been honored to host the director of the Henson Archives and talk a little bit with her, and it's been amazing to learn about all the work that went into these creatures to make them so lifelike. People are asking also if there's a catalog of our exhibit available, and we are currently working on taking photographs of this exhibition to put online with all the information, the labels and text panels. So that will be up soon. As for the Columbus Museum of Art, I'm not completely sure. They have a book
Yeah, let
catalog,
me-
correct?
Yes. Funny you mentioned that, because I edited the book and have an essay in it. Lynn has an essay in it.
I
John
bet.
Bell has an extensive, beautiful essay in it that deals with a lot of the issues in puppets and illustrates some of the work that's in the show. So and that's available at your local bookstores. And it's called Wild Things Are Happening, The Art of Maurice Sendak. Same name as the retrospective. It's a catalog for the retrospective, and it's really, I think, really beautiful book. It was just featured in Art Forum and the New York Times Book Review. So that's a great thing for people to get a sense of Maurice's work. Great. Yes.
Thank you very much for that, Jonathan. And thank you again, everyone who was here tonight with us on the World Wide Web and also here in the museum. Thank you all and have a lovely night. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.